Hi, my name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 29, and I never imagined that my own marriage would make me question my worth. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I always believed love and family were supposed to feel like home. But right now, sitting in my husband's living room, feeling the weight of their eyes on me, I realize I was wrong. It all started last night. My husband, Ethan Carter, had invited his family over for dinner to welcome me properly after our wedding anniversary. But instead of warmth, I was met with cold stares, whispers, and subtle jabs. I tried to laugh off a few comments, hoping to smooth things over, but then it happened. Honestly, Olivia, sometimes I wonder why Ethan even married you. His mother, Diane Carter, said with that sharp, condescending tone. You're kind of useless, aren't you? The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My heart raced, my palms sweated, and I could barely speak. Ethan's sister, Madison, smirked from across the table, clearly enjoying the humiliation. And Ethan? He looked away, awkward, silent. In that moment, I felt every ounce of doubt I'd ever had about myself flood back. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. But before I could do either, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my dad. And something told me he would not let them get away with it. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, the eldest of 3 children. My father, Gregory Bennett, was always steady and supportive, the kind of man who believed in teaching by example. My mother, Karen Bennett, on the other hand, well, she had a sharp tongue. She often criticized my choices, comparing me to my younger brother, Logan, who seemed to effortlessly meet every expectation she had. As a child, I learned early on that love often came with conditions. If I got an A on a test, it wasn't praised, it was expected. If I helped my younger sister, Haley, with her schoolwork, it was taken for granted. And if I ever failed, the sting of disappointment was relentless. My father, though, always quietly reminded me of my worth. He'd say, Olivia, it's not what they say that defines you, it's what you believe about yourself. These early lessons shaped me. I became a person who constantly sought approval, always giving more than I received. I carried this mindset into my marriage with Ethan. I thought that by being attentive, caring, and hardworking, I could earn the love and respect of his family. I was wrong. Even before the useless comment, I had noticed the subtle coldness in Diane's eyes, the dismissive nods from Madison, the way Ethan seemed hesitant to defend me. But I clung to hope, remembering how my father had always believed in standing up for what's right. Perhaps, maybe he would once again remind me of my worth, this time when I needed it the most. After the humiliating dinner, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Diane's words in my head, the way Madison had smirked, and Ethan's silence. I started questioning everything I had done since marrying Ethan. Every extra hour I spent helping organize family events, every late night I stayed up preparing a home-cooked meal, every small sacrifice I had made, it all felt invisible now. I remember the countless weekends I had given up to attend family gatherings I secretly dreaded, just to prove I was trying, to be part of their world. The Christmas when I spent 2 days baking dozens of cookies, only to have Diane throw them away later, saying, "They're fine, I guess." Or the summer when I worked overtime to save enough to buy Ethan's parents a vacation gift, only to hear Madison whisper, "Why bother? She'll never do anything right anyway." It wasn't just the material efforts, it was the emotional labor, too. I listened patiently as Diane criticized my cooking, my wardrobe, even my choice of friends. I tried to offer advice when Madison faced challenges, hoping to build a bond. I cleaned, cooked, and tried to keep peace in the house. And yet, the more I gave, the more I felt like nothing I did was ever enough. By the time the useless comment was made, I felt like a dam ready to break. Every memory of being overlooked, every ounce of my efforts dismissed, culminated in that one moment. I wanted to cry, to shout, to leave. But something inside me whispered, this was bigger than a single insult. My father's voice echoed in my mind, Olivia, you deserve better than their judgment. It was then I realized that this wasn't just about hurt feelings. It was about being seen, truly respected, and for once, standing up for myself in a world that seemed determined to underestimate me. And that breaking point, it was closer than I had ever imagined. The next morning, I tried to move on, hoping last night's humiliation would fade. But as soon as I walked into the living room, Diane and Madison were waiting, armed with scornful smiles. "Olivia," Diane said, her voice dripping with condescension, "did you even manage to do anything useful this week? Or should we keep calling you useless?" I froze. Every fiber of my being ached, not just from the insult but from the silence that followed. Ethan stood nearby, his eyes fixed on the floor, unable, or unwilling, to defend me. Madison giggled, clearly delighted by my discomfort. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Anger, shame, and frustration collided inside me. My voice shook as I whispered, "I've worked my hardest. I've given everything I could." Diane rolled her eyes. "Clearly not hard enough. Maybe you're just not cut out for this family." The words felt like a shove, and I knew I couldn't stay. Without another word, I grabbed my coat, my heart hammering in my chest, and walked toward the door. The click of the latch, the slam of the door, it was more than a physical exit. It was a declaration. I would no longer let their words define me. As I stepped outside into the crisp morning air, my phone buzzed. A message from my dad. "Stand tall, Liv. I've got your back." At that moment, I realized the path ahead wasn't about confronting them, it was about reclaiming myself. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in a place where my worth was constantly questioned, where my efforts were dismissed, and where love was conditional. I called my father, Gregory, who immediately offered his unwavering support. "Olivia," he said, "sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. You don't owe them anything." With his words echoing in my mind, I began planning my escape, not in haste, but with careful intention. I sold my belongings that tied me to the past, furniture, decor, even my wedding gifts. I resigned from my job quietly, leaving no room for questions. And then, one early morning, I packed a single suitcase and left, not looking back. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, a place I had always admired for its quiet charm and vibrant community. I rented a small apartment, far enough to feel free, but close enough to build a new life. I found a modest job at a local bookstore and started attending a community art class, small steps that slowly rebuilt my confidence. At first, the loneliness was crushing. I questioned my choices, doubted my strength, and missed the familiarity of family life. But each day, I reminded myself of my father's words. I began journaling, setting boundaries, and cultivating friendships that weren't tainted with judgment. Months passed, and with every small victory, an unexpected compliment at work, a weekend hike with new friends, the laughter of neighbors who genuinely cared, I felt my self-worth returning. I discovered that life could be gentle, even joyful, and that my happiness didn't depend on approval from people who had never truly seen me. For the first time in years, I was finally living for myself. Free from the chains of judgment, I realized that choosing to disappear wasn't about punishment. It was about survival and self-respect. A few months into my new life, the past began creeping back. First came the calls, from Madison, half-hearted apologies dripping with guilt, and then from Diane, painting fake crises and guilt-tripping me. "Olivia, your father is worried about you," Diane said one morning, her voice feigning concern. "You can't just leave without thinking about the family." I felt a flicker of old doubt, but it was quickly extinguished by the strength I had built. I remembered my father's constant reassurance. "Olivia, you choose your life, not them." Madison sent texts trying to manipulate me. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Can we just talk?" But I could sense the insincerity, the attempt to pull me back into the toxic web I had escaped. Then came a particularly dramatic message from Diane. "Your father says you're making a huge mistake. Your family misses you. Come home." I called my dad immediately, needing his guidance. "Dad, they're trying to guilt me," I said, my voice shaking. Gregory Bennett's tone was calm but firm. "Liv, stand your ground. They will always try to drag you back, but this time you know your worth." You don't have to justify your life to anyone who doesn't respect it. And I finally understood. Their attempts to pull me back were not about love, they were about control. I refused to let them dictate my happiness again. My boundaries were stronger than ever, and the toxic cycle that had haunted me for years was finally broken. Sitting on the balcony of my small Asheville apartment, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The anxiety, the shame, and the constant need for validation had all started to fade. I was no longer Olivia Bennett, the useless daughter-in-law. I was Olivia Bennett, a woman who had reclaimed her life, her happiness, and her self-worth. I thought about my father's unwavering support through every stage of my journey. He had reminded me that love isn't about approval or blood. It's about respect, care, and understanding. Leaving had been the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it was also the most necessary. Now, whenever I feel a shadow of doubt, I remember the truth I've discovered. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I've learned that family is proven by love, not just blood, and that sometimes standing up for yourself is the ultimate act of courage. As I sip my morning coffee, sunlight spilling across the balcony, I smile. I've built a life where my voice matters, my efforts are valued, and my happiness is my own. And in that realization, I find an empowering peace that no criticism, judgment, or toxic family dynamic can ever take away.